So welcome everyone to Beyond the Color. I get the opportunity to host this conversation with my co-slave and my lady Natalie, and I am married for those of you that we haven't gotten the opportunity to meet. And I'm excited. Today feels like we're gonna press restart on some of our conversations, but let's go through our normal housekeeping. So we want to take a moment and let you all know that due to some fun that we had probably a couple months ago at this point, we've had to do some enhanced security here in our conversations. So you'll find that you can't unmute yourself. However, throughout this conversation, it is meant for us to continue the conversation and hear different perspectives. So you guys can share in two ways. You can either ask to come off of mute, we just ask that you use the raise hand feature, or you can drop your ideas, thoughts, perspectives in the chat. If you are listening on a streamed platform, please feel free to leverage that chat as well, as we'll keep eyes out. And by us, I mean our master, who is joining us, Master Joshua. He's the man behind the keyboard.
Hello. For now.
For now. Foreshadowing. So he will keep an eye out for your comments and be sure to share that as we move throughout the conversation. I want to take a moment and just recognize that Natalie and I don't, while her and I are 24/7 collared submissives and slaves, we realize that we get to be a part of this lifestyle and in it and in that headspace more often than everyone else can sometimes. So we want to take a moment and allow you to come closest to your subspace, whether that's grabbing your closest stuffy, grabbing your pup hood, give Natalie a bark, or finding just a moment to shake off today and come into our conversations as we get ready to kick off our discussion. I know there's a much fancier title, so Natalie corrects me. What is our full topic today?
Well, yes, we are talking about subdrop following our conversation last week on subspace. The fancier title for today's conversation is processing and navigating subdrop.
See, way more nice. I covered that. I do want to call out Natalie made the topics for this month, so I'm super excited to dive into the questions. She has the ability to kind of go that inch deeper, and we usually have really incredible calls that kind of leave us almost reimagined on some of these topics sometimes. If you're new to Beyond the Collar, we're doing a lot of evolving in our space. And historically, this has been a poll that Natalie and I created as a sign of our relationship as we are co-slaves to the same master, as I shared earlier. But really, we wanted to open up these discussions and these topics to hear perspectives of other S-types in the community. And her and I kicked this off 4 months ago, which you all are incredible and you join us every Tuesday. But as our conversation evolved and our relationship evolved, we knew that this conversation also had to evolve. So if you haven't seen our post yet, be sure to drop and read the full post either on FetLife or on Instagram at beyond.the.color. But to just kind of go over what is changing in our space is, while Natalie and I will always represent the submissive side of the slash, we all want to pair up with our master to bring in both sides of the slash for representation and perspective. We want this conversation to evolve and to have a space where everyone, no matter whether you're on either side of the slash, you're exploring, you're new to the community, wherever you are at, you can come here and you can learn, you can ask questions, and you can just come and exist as well alongside the rest of our community as we've built thus far. So while it's going to feel a little bit different and our questions will be more inclusive in both sides of the slash and not just focused on either or, we still want everyone to come and represent no matter where you're at. Natalie, I'll turn it to you. Did I leave anything out there? Is there anything else we want to share on that?
No, that was beautiful. That was a great summary of the little letter I wrote and posted for us. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to the rest of this month. It's going to continue to be Mary and I as host on camera, and Master Joshua will be behind the camera reading comments and putting in his little ad-libs. And in September, we will begin with having Master Joshua on camera and having him be involved in sharing the dominant perspective to our submission. And like Mary said, the topics are going to be tailored to both sides of the slash. And I think it's going to be, there's so much more room to evolve as people and as community members within the kink community. So I'm really looking forward to it.
No, so am I. While this may feel like a big change for some, we definitely just want to reassure you guys nothing is changing in this space. We will still continue to have these incredible conversations. In fact, it may feel a little even more well-rounded as we kind of discuss all the different pieces. And I feel like we've learned so much from one another. So by extending our audience, we can only continue to learn and grow as we move forward. So really excited. Like I said, we do have a full release. Natalie took some time to write it out. So please be sure to check us out on whichever platform you found us on.
Yes.
May I speak, ladies, with your permission, please?
Only September 1st. September 1st. I was kidding.
Yeah, shut up, pig, and then zap me. No, I just want to say I'm really excited, and I've learned so much just from listening to you guys, and the ability to share perspective on what I've learned as a dominant, hearing what you guys are sharing, and then how I could integrate that, and then possibly also discussing our perspective on how to communicate, how to gap the bridges, right? So I'm really, really excited, and you guys are knocking it out of the park. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing
Yes,
that as well.
you.
Yes.
So if you guys are excited with us, be sure to drop us a heart in the chat and come join us every Tuesday at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. Awesome, I'm seeing some hearts. So we'll go ahead and kick off our conversation. So Natalie, I'm gonna drop the first question, but I'm gonna have you read it and you can reflect first.
She's like, I opened.
Right away.
Here's the first question. You
Your
answer
turn.
it first, and I respect that completely. I respect that completely. Okay, so processing and navigating subdrop. The first question: define subdrop. What does it mean / look like for you? So, subdrop is when, I can't even say that it happens when I participate in an extraordinarily intense scene or have or intense play, because I feel like it can happen then or it doesn't happen. It can happen when I'm doing a small scene that's like 20 minutes, that's not intense. It mostly arrives for me when I don't prepare myself for the fact that it could come. But I guess in a more simpler definition, it is the subspace for me is this like adrenaline, sort of euphoria, place of ultimate surrender, and subdrop is the after effect of that. Not saying that if I don't enter subspace, or how do I say this? If I enter subspace, it doesn't mean that I'm going to drop either, if that makes sense. For me, what does it look like? As somebody who experiences anxiety on a regular basis, I become pretty anxious the next day or shortly after. It's more so the day after than immediately after play with a scene. And I find that I'm a little flat, a little gray, my emotions are a little bit all over the place. I am unfocused. I may be crying randomly. I'm a bit like PMS symptoms. not gonna lie. That's basically what it feels like. And then I have to question, was it the scene or when am I getting my period? And it feels like that. Yeah, I should have said it in the beginning. That's basically what it is for me.
No, I respect that. I feel like with any great definition that comes in our community, I always have like a quarrel with it. Like it's multiple things for me. I think like as I define subdrop for myself, it could be one of two things. It could be like this depressed, mopey, I can't leave my bed, woe is me. Like it's very dramatic, and it's funny because like I could probably put myself more into subdrop by just natural interaction than it is like a play scene for me. And being in a submissive space too, like it can also just be exhaustion. Like my body is tired, my mind's not right, like, but it's not that depressive, like because I feel like it can be both. And I can also be in a positive headspace in my subdrop. And like Natalie, as you were sharing, like I don't necessarily have to, every time I get, I go into subspace, I'm not necessarily going to drop the next day. It's really just dependent on like, what was the scenario? What came up for me? Did I trigger something in myself? Because I was talking about this last night with my therapist actually, and I said I feel like subdrop can come from being in a 24/7 headspace of service and pushing and moving and going, and perhaps it doesn't have to be this dark dwelling thing. And I don't want to take away from when it is so dark and heavy for some. I wonder how much of it is like a headspace of like, how much am I doing to myself? Because sometimes too, I can put myself into saying, I'm going to drop, and I might have not necessarily done it, but I'm telling myself, oh, now you're going to drop tomorrow, you're going to need to take the day off, you're going to need to do, and it's like, how much of that am I walking myself into due to anxiety or due to overthinking this scenario? Yeah. And what it looks like is one of those two things. Either like I have my fun bun up, I'm in my sweatpants, and like I'm just chilling on the couch all day, or I need to be productive as a mother. Like I can't just shut off, and so I have to find that balance sometimes to be like, okay, we can play hide and seek, but then like mommy needs to chill for a sec. So I feel like I'm kind of conflicted with subdrop.
Yeah, no, that makes everything you said makes. I agree with myself as well, and it also, from listening to you, I went into myself and realized that I actually think that I receive subdrop more often from intimacy and sexual experiences and just sex and lack thereof. In the sense that like I've had a sexual experience that was gratifying and I feel connected to the person, and then I can't, and then I have to do something else immediately, or I have to the next day. I'm so busy that I'm like grieving. It's almost like grief drop for me. That's the word that popped into my head once you said that, of the leaving of, oh no, now I have to go back into real world or real life. Exactly.
I can't do this all the time.
Exactly. Yes?
Can I share a definition?
Please.
Sure.
So on our friend Google, it says, what is subdrop? It's an emotional and physical low that begins anywhere from a few hours to a few days after an emotional endorphin high and can last hours to weeks. The specific term subdrop comes from the kink community. Hooray, that's us! Because it's typically experienced by submissive individuals after an intense scene.
Is that Merriam-Webster or?
That's medium.com.
Cool.
Yeah, we had someone say weeks long. Jesus, that sounds horrid. And I think too, it's like when I was first explained it, like I was brand new to the lifestyle, and I've never played as hard till I was a client of Master Joshua. And I said, wow, I feel great. And he was like, all right, hold on, because like everything that goes up has to come down. But I wasn't ready for like it just sometimes you have to, it feels really gratifying though when you can get a hold of like, okay, like I'm slowly coming down. It's not like that rapidness, and I think that comes with growth in time as well. Lizzie?
Hello. Yeah, definitely hear you on the learning how to navigate it and recognize it for what it is. And sometimes it can happen when you don't even have play. If you're experiencing like something that's super stressful, trigger warning, this involves death. I had somebody outside of my kitchen window on a motorcycle not have his helmet on properly, and I watched him die, and it was like I couldn't figure out why I was. Well, I mean, obviously why you're so upset, but it was. I said after that had happened, I was like, oh my God, this is almost like I'm going through drop. It was all of the same things. Like you got all of the same kind of brain drugs going on. And so as soon as I recognized, like, it was the same mental space that I was occupying where I was really sad, I was like, okay, I just need to give myself space and time and grace and allow myself to process this. How I'm feeling right now is not how I'm always going to feel. And just slow down. Just stop worrying about nothing's wrong with me. My brain just needs to stabilize itself. And through play, I've learned, it doesn't always come on for me. I feel like if it's an emotionally more rigorous scene, that typically is when it happens. And when I first started to play, I always said, okay, if I'm going to play, I need to make sure that I have the next day off in case it happens. That way I'm not caught in a situation where, I'm working retail and I'm standing on the floor selling somebody dog food and I just start crying. Like I need to take care of me. And so for, 2 years, when I first entered the community, I made sure, all right, you can play, but you have to have the next day off. So there are only certain days that you're allowed to play. What else did I do? I slowed down. I'm allowed to give myself stuff that I would not normally eat, like candy or something like that. And I also, when I'm negotiating scenes with people, if they are not interested in the level of aftercare that I require, finding a friend or a support network or somebody that I can, because I need physical touch, I need hugs. Making sure that I have those things in place.
Thank you, Lizzie, for sharing. There's a couple of comments in the comments section. I don't know if you want to read them.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, ma'am. I'm right on it. Let me just pull up the chat. I was governing the gates. All right. So subdrop is the sad that sometimes happens after subspace or time with my partner, even if there was no subspace. It usually happens a day or more later. I'm sad, emotional, feel needy. Weeks long, Jesus, that sounds hard. To me, subdrop is a phase that I enter into after an experience that elevates different neurotransmitters, dopamine, serotonin, endorphins, etc. And sometimes this elevates to the point of an event like an anxiety or panic attack. It takes me about 4 to 5 days to move through it. This is hard for me to put into words. As someone very sensitive to others' energy, I'm more likely to have drop after a time where I feel especially connected to my partner. It usually happens about 2 days later. Have had it weeks later. And there can be residual that lasts weeks on and off, like I feel stuck to them, kind of. If that makes sense. For me, it's a period of anxiety, crying, loneliness, and insecurity. I second guess my dominant feelings as well as my own. Lots of negative self-talk. It usually happens 36 to 48 hours after a scene. And then there was one more that says, anything that causes that dopamine and endorphin change can cause it. It depends what chemicals are produced. It's all about Sorry, it's all energy and chemical high followed by the withdrawal from those chemicals. There you go.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with this last comment about second guessing my dominance feelings as well as my own. And that's ultimately what leads me into the spiral of sub-drop being much more terrible than it has to be for me. So why don't we move on to the next question?
Okay.
How has your experience with sub-drop informed and or changed your pre, during, and post-scene needs? How do you advocate for yourself?
So I'll drop that in the chat. Let's sit with this one because this one was I was trying to read ahead. Natalie, we said that we were gonna process live. I was trying to read a little bit ahead with some of these questions to gear myself. How has my experience with sub-drop informed and or changed? So I think for me, I've always had a weird relationship with touch. Being an abuse victim, like sex to me was sex, and I was like, okay, cool, we play, and then like we don't touch, we don't cuddle, we don't hug. Like I had to grow into that. And what I found was the more safe I became, the more comfortable I was. But what I've learned in sub-drop is I don't have solid aftercare like needs and wants. And I had to take time, and as I was chatting with my therapist last night, I was like, wow, I really don't advocate for when I am feeling so dark and deep, and like, how do I ask? And they were like, you see how you just said, like, you need to ask, like, that's how you say it. You just need to say it. But I think, like, it kind of ties back into when you're in that sub-drop and, like, you're already talking yourself down. You've talked yourself out of your entire relationship and really out of your own self-being. Of, like, well, I don't need anything and I'm fine. And that's really not what's happening. So I think for me, I've learned that I need to have better aftercare following a scene. And like, whether that's just taking a couple of minutes to like kneel in service, be held, just be reassured that like, you're okay, you're gonna be okay. Like, everything's fine. Like the world didn't stop because like, you're feeling bad right now. And I think it kind of ties into like how you connect with sadness too. And like, when sadness comes upon you, like I was a kid that I was told I could never cry. So like the idea of crying puts me in that headspace of like, oh no, like, something's gonna go wrong. So it's really just kind of evolved. How do I advocate for myself? I need to do better with advocating for myself. I need to speak when it's happening. Because what I find is I erase my feelings and my needs because I'm more concerned about someone else. And really I'm robbing them of the opportunity to come and be there, which is something that I've been connecting to as of late. So I think that while I advocate in most avenues of my life, and I say, this is what I need, this is what I want, I need to do better in the sense of like, when I am down, having that same carry of like, we can vibe and have like this high life together, but when I'm hurting, I need you to be there too. And here's how I need it to happen. So how about for you, Natalie?
In the beginning of my dynamic and relationship, or when I was dating and getting to know Master, navigating sub-drop was much more difficult because I would come over and I would have a couple of hours and then I wouldn't really know when I would be able to see him again. So I had to go through many scenes and many experiences in which I had to struggle through until I was able to not drown in the struggle and kind of see what was happening to my body after I was just become more aware of how my body was receiving the play and the sex and the intimacy and the connection and what was happening in those hard hours and how I could become give myself grace, honestly. And that is what is the best and most helpful way for me to mitigate the immensity of the distress and what it can become, is to tell myself before I'm participating or while I'm in it, and I realize that it's becoming intense, that afterwards and the day afterwards, and maybe even the day after that, I have to give myself, release the pressure on being as productive and as the best version of myself as possible. And whatever that looks like, it changes all the time. Now that I am almost very close, actually, a year into my dynamic, I live with Master, so I have the privilege to be able to voice what I need when I'm experiencing drop much more conveniently and easily. Obviously, that's circumstantial because I can't always ask for what I really need, because I have to put circumstance and time and factor his life into the equation as well. So a lot of the time I will just whimper like a little puppy and ask for cuddles for like 3 minutes. Or I'll be like, you have to work, so let me just like lay at your feet. just to get like grounded just a little bit. So that really helped. How do I advocate? Like I said, I just look at the circumstances of the day, of the situation, of how I'm feeling, of what tomorrow looks like, of what's happened today, of what my emotions are, what his emotions are, what everyone else emotions are that I know of are happening within all the relationships in the polycule, and I decide, okay, this is what I can ask for, and I think I can get or receive a yes from this based off of my analysis of the entirety of the situation. But if it's a no, then I ask for less, and then I ask tomorrow for something smaller. That's it.
That's fair. And as you were sharing, we had a bunch of comments come in, so Master, I'll turn it to you.
I request a post-scene check in a day or two later, considering I've only played with a partner. It's a requirement to scene. If I ever scened with someone not a partner, I'd make sure I made plans with a friend a day or two later that I could talk to about the drop. I've started giving myself a sloth day the next day, which includes giving myself permission to rest and be indulgent with self-care. It also makes it easier to let others know that I'm in drop without having to actually find words for my feelings. And then understanding and learning what has gotten me to those points, what are trigger points and how scenes impact me mentally. Going through trial and errors to what works and what doesn't is a situational moment. Making sure that I use my voice and what I need, and then making sure that I do self-reflection and self-care towards myself too. Can I make a comment too?
Please.
My speed is always 100 miles per hour, and rarely do I experience drop, so I don't understand the feeling of the needs. So I don't have a deep understanding of what's missing, because rarely do I miss it. I'll get burnout before I get dropped. So if I can ask you guys, please tell me what you need when you need it. And I will always do my best on following through, and at the very least communicate why I can't. But please don't do the math for me, because you won't know where you land on my scale. Because I was talking about this yesterday. Food, shelter, and safety are priorities for me, and this is a safety issue. Right, it's a mental safety, emotional safety, and that has to be a priority. But I don't know if it's not shared, and shared the way that it has to be shared. So that's just hearing, and this is what I talk about, being able to sit here and listen to you guys process this stuff. It's like, I wish I knew this so that I could have at least start processing this earlier, right? And I know you guys do share at times, and it's like, I don't want you to ask for less. Like, hearing that I'm disappointed in myself.
You shouldn't be.
No, but I don't want that to be the position.
It's not about asking for less. It's about the math, and I understand where you come from in the sense where you say you don't want us to do the math for you, but like you say, you're running 100 miles an hour, 100 miles per hour. Let's put it down to 90. If I can do a little bit less math than you, then it's not taking me much space up in my head to do that. If anything, it's helping with getting my logical brain working more than my emotional brain.
That's fair. That's fair. Thank you for letting me share that.
Yeah, thank you. Anne?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Hi, my name's Anne. I just wanted to say I'm always a little bit shocked that we only ever seem to hear about drop in the context of sub-drop. After a sub or a bottom is the one playing and they have a strong experience. But I don't know, in my experience, everyone I think could benefit of the framework of dropping after a strong experience. If you recognize that those transmitters are going off in your brain, you're going to be out of balance for a few days. And while all of those chemicals come back into equilibrium, I think, like, I've noticed, like, when my friends get tattoos or piercings, I will notice them dropping, and I'm like, hey, listen, you need to take care of yourself now. Like, your body is going through something, and your brain's trying to catch up. Like, I think it would be beneficial in so many other contexts for us to be able to recognize and realize that, and
I don't know what you talk
change our aftercare needs, regardless of what the experience is, to really get to know ourselves, to stay hydrated, to come up with a plan before it happens. That way we can manage it when we get there.
Thank you. And
I love that,
I completely
Anne.
agree.
I know, I was like, what an awesome reflection. Yes, absolutely. And I'm curious how many people are mindful to do so, right? Because I think too, like, sometimes it sneaks up on people as well. Because I've seen a lot of strong people drop as well, and individuals that don't allow themselves that grace to come down and to witness people that you're not used to dropping. You're like, whoa, what do I do? Because it's kind of like, I'm used to you being the one that has it all together. So it's like you prepping in advance is definitely needed in any of those connections.
Yeah, and yes, I do believe that there is the equivalent of sub drop to dom drop, and we can even take sub and dom out of it, and it could just be called drop. And hence why I'm really looking forward to having a more inclusive conversation next month, where we will have the dominant and submissive perspective. So thank you.
There's another comment, if I can share.
Please.
I had to help with Dom Drop a few weeks ago. It wasn't related to a scene, but they needed support. They needed to be held, and I insisted on doing that for them. I asked about aftercare for my top at my first scene, because everyone needs to be cared about and for.
100%. And I've heard individuals reflect that sometimes they don't ask about their top because they're so used to being the one like to care and to do all the things. And it was like the biggest act of service is giving your top the care that they also need, while also caring for yourself. Like, don't let it be an interchangeable thing. It should be a solely like a dual met requirement on both sides to make sure you're both getting what you need.
Someone said, I have a partner that specifically asked for more nurturing as they have never really experienced it. So I have been more mindful of checking in and recognizing when they need it and don't know how to ask for it. So yeah, I think negotiating aftercare needs for both top or bottom, dominant and submissive is necessary.
Awesome. Let's move to the next question. So, how has your recovery aftercare drop differed from a scene and experience where you entered subspace compared to one you didn't?
For me, I think it doesn't correlate. I think the main theme for me that I realized, or I'm realizing in this call, is that my experience with subdrop has become less and less. It happens less and less where I feel an immense drop, but it's still random, or it feels random. I'm sure there's some through line for, and I think something that you said earlier, Mary, about almost dooming it to happen, or like willing it into the universe. Like, oh shit, this is an intense scene. I feel very connected. I'm crying during it. Tomorrow is going to be a mess for me, and that is something that will push me into drop more than the actual intensity of whatever we're doing is. So I don't think subspace is particularly correlated to my drop. Yeah, that's my answer.
No, that's fair. As you were sharing that too, I think that when I reach like a very high subspace, I'm usually like enamored by everybody that's around me, the people that I get to interact with. Like, I become very grateful for where I'm at in my life, and I kind of have this moment of like, wow, this is what I get to do, and like I get to be here, and like when I am really into space, sometimes I become very distant and like I call inward. And it's not, and now that I'm talking it out loud, I think that that's my drop starting. Because as being long distance, I grieve the people before I'm almost gone from them. And sometimes it happens mid-play, and then I watch everyone else play, and I'm like, wow, so like, this is what I want to do this all with them all the time. And it's almost like this inner sadness that comes in of like, what comes next, right? Like, is it always gonna be like that? And like, again, then it's the swirl of like, is it always gonna be like this? Am I always gonna have to say goodbye? Like, even events, like I went out to New York City for an event, and we had a blast, and like just laughing. And it was funny because I was telling Natalie, I was like, I'm just gonna sit here until someone tells me to go. I'm not leaving. But I connect to, like, I don't think that they're necessarily intertwined, but I feel like when I hit these high moments, I'm opening myself internally to feel even more, right? Like, and when I'm feeling at my highest, like, my guards are down, everything's open, all my wounds are seen, right? But like, I can do this to myself just breathing, like, like give me a couple minutes and like tell me to overthink something. But again, like, I'm curious now, and I'm gonna be more mindful as I go into like when I have the opportunity to be in subspace, of what is it like for me coming down? Like, is it me driving those conversations, or is it really my surroundings that are causing it to do so?
You guys have a hand up, Mistress Rhiannon. Sorry for the delay, I just saw the message.
Yes. Hello.
Hello. I actually had been in the TikTok before and wanted to comment a little bit. There was a comment made about someone not knowing what drop was like, but rather burnout. And I think that from the D side, we often feel drop as burnout because we don't necessarily acknowledge it as drop. We have that release, we have that, okay, everything that we have to do in this moment is done, so now we're just going to collapse. And it is a form of drop. Yeah, I actually so I know most people don't know me. I actually hold a degree in psychology, and I am working on studying the neuropsychology of endorphins and why we do what we do in the psychology of BDSM and the neuropsychology of BDSM. Mickey knows me pretty well at this point. And one of the things that I study is the behaviors and what motivates us to do what we do. And a lot of what I find is that we all go through these cycles. We all go through these things, and it's a matter of what we are willing to identify and label them as. So those of us who perceive ourselves as being strong, as being dominant, as being on that left side of the slash, may not be as willing to admit that we're dropping. As far, when we talk about aftercare or taking care of ourselves, I mean, when we went to Frolicon, I had 11 people that were part of our group. We have a family mesh that takes care of one another. So a submissive who isn't scening is tasked to take care of the submissive who is currently in the scene. When they come down off of whatever piece of equipment, somebody has a blanket and somebody has water and somebody else has a snack, and it's all kind of taken care of. And somebody else grabs me a bottle of water, and it's all like this dance, okay? It's all kind of orchestrated, and we handle it as a family. And then when we all go home, we are all checking on one another. And it's all orchestrated as a family because we are a house, or we are a coalition of houses, and we all take care of each other. And I think that one of the lovely things about the internet is that we can interact with each other even if we are hundreds or thousands of miles away, and we can support one another hundreds and thousands of miles away. And I'm sorry to get a little bit off track like that, but it's just some of the things that I've been sitting on the other side unable to say.
No, that was beautiful, Mrs. Rhiannon. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yes, I would also say that from watching, what you say is burnout looks a lot like what my drop feels like. So I agree, and I feel that I can see that perspective of the dominance not wanting to not as an admittance sort of thing, but it's maybe it is, I don't know. But I see it as it being what it feels like.
You mentioned that over the weekend.
But I connected to when you shared that, like, your family takes care of one another, because, like, I can connect to that with playing too, of, like, making, like, because you're always on point of, like, okay, this one, they're probably going to need water, I'm going to go get water, oh, I'm going to go get Gatorade, or, oh, they just need an extra couple of minutes, and, like, let me come in and, like, help out. So I connect to that too, and I think, like, it was shared earlier of, like, it doesn't necessarily have to be who you're scening with too, it's just making sure that you are getting cared for, or there is care around you that's focused, and seeing you while you're coming down as well. Cool. Did we want to move into the next question? I know we're
we're getting close. So yes, let's do the next one. Victims of sub-drop. I think we've been talking about a few tips and tricks here and there without saying that they're tips and tricks, but we've been kind of speaking about them from our own experience. And for me, a couple of them I think what helps me the most is preparing myself for the fact that I could have drop. And that could be simply just saying to myself, this is intense. Let me give myself some grace and be kind to myself tomorrow, and whether the day after or afterwards. And what that can look like depends on the day and what I have to get done. But I can always pick up a favorite food or a favorite snack. I can always get myself a nice fancy espresso in the morning. I can, instead of making it at home, I can always talk to a friend. I can always reach out to Master and whimper and say, can I have 2 minutes? And can you pet my head? And, you know, there's small things that I can always do no matter what the circumstances of my day look like. Yeah, that's what I have.
I love that. If I could make a Build-A-Bear of all the people in my life, I would, and I would have their voices played. That's something that I've thought about doing, just because it helps aid distance and being apart when you can't have that physical touch or need. I would say too, having a kit ready. I've seen it dropped in the chat a bit, but this was something that I made after like my first play session. But it has like coloring books, crayons. It has my stuffy, Mr. Pickles. We have my blanket from when I was a baby that I sleep with every night. But it has the things that make me feel the most connected to myself and to memories that I get to share with others. Something else that I've started to do when I'm in sub-drop is I reflect on memories in my life that I was lucky enough to experience. And so I scrapbook. And when I'm sad, I make it a point to scrapbook about something that makes me happy. Because if I'm thinking about something that makes me happy, I can't be sad. Or I cry happy tears. One of the two things will happen. But I think the biggest thing is loving yourself through it, because I think that it is really easy to get angry at yourself for feeling the way that you do. Gosh, this is such a waste of time. Like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be in this headspace. But acknowledging that you are. I think we touched on this a long time ago too. Of if you change the mentality of like, I'm gonna be okay. Life's gonna be okay, and like, I'm going to come back to this space every time I feel like this, or do my best to come back to this space, right? Because I want to be realistic in how I share. But perhaps if we can help shift the way our mind is thinking, we can try to make drop a little bit less intense as it so likes to do. Lizzie?
So quite frequently, I will actually lean into it. I will put on stuff that intentionally makes me cry, like songs or something, and I will just let it go, let myself feel sad, instead of pushing back against it, because it's okay to cry, and it's okay to be sad, but sometimes it's just cathartic to just like ugly cry, snot all over the place, but just let yourself. And then after I give myself that period of ugly cry and just a mess, I will then quite frequently join like our Discord chat, and I'll say to my friends, I'm like, okay, I've had my cry, my sadness. I now need a bit of a distraction so that I'm not sitting there the entire time that I'm going through drop. So I will. If people are talking to me on Discord while I'm working, because I'm a courier driver, it will help my brain focus on something other than where I'm currently sitting. And that makes the time go by. And that's ultimately like the goal, is to like just let time pass and it'll go away. Your brain drugs will stabilize and everything will be all right. So that's something that I found recently in like the last year that's been really helpful for me.
Yes.
I'd like to comment to follow on still Lizzie about leaning into it. I bottomed for the first time to someone who I trust a couple weeks ago. And shortly after the scene, I felt like a little drop come on. And I was processing, sitting with the feelings and trying to figure out where it was coming from. And I was sad that I couldn't access that type of freedom and being cared for more regularly, to where I can ask for something and be open to receiving it and not feel guilty about it. That I can be in appreciation of it and know that I can ask for what I want versus asking for someone to do something to me that they want. And I also put that in comparison with the space that I hold for others. And it was like, it was a kick in the chest, because it's like, what prevents me from accessing that?
Yeah, no, that's exactly what my question was going to be. What's the boulder in your way when you're on the dominant side?
Well, I think that, like, first and foremost, nobody wants to sit around being sad. Like, that sucks. I don't enjoy doing that. But by doing it, I don't know. It helps me process things, I guess, maybe a little bit quicker, or maybe it's just a normal response of not wanting to feel that way. It's not a positive emotion. It's the same thing with polyamory and jealousy. We don't really want to feel that way. We try to do all the things we can to avoid those kinds of emotions, because they're not easy. They're not fun to do.
No, and I agree with you, Lizzie. I don't think that. I think coping mechanisms are helpful to help you move through the difficult emotions, not to avoid them. So for me, it's like if using something to help me get through my day and to feel the emotions, but to not become so overwhelmed by them that I can't continue my day, then that's okay with me. So for me, it's more of like all of my little small things, like my little coffee or getting little pets or cuddles, is more like a very small dose of an anti-anxiety medication, just so that I can move through my emotions and feel them, but not become panicked and overwhelmed and feel like I'm going to have to lay in bed for 2 or 3 days because I dug myself into a hole.
It's almost like you're shifting your focus. You're trying to get your brain to engage in a different way so that it doesn't become all consuming.
Yeah, I'm trying to stimulate myself in a couple of different. Yeah, exactly. All consuming. This is a good way to put it.
And I know that we're coming close, and I think we're starting to touch on the last question, so I'm just gonna drop it. And it's how can better understanding yourself in subdrop and or subspace better your self-actualization journey? And I think that you guys are starting to touch on that a bit. So did you want to kick that off?
Yeah, and I think that's the conversation we were just having. I think it's really important to watch yourself when you're experiencing drop, and to watch yourself when you're experiencing that euphoria of subspace. See the range of where you can go. I think that noticing yourself and witnessing your full range of emotions within high intensity is a huge step, just that awareness in your self-actualization journey. But then being able to see what you actually need, or not even just see it, but to be able to listen to yourself and then actually communicate what you need or what you want, or what your desires are within those spaces. I think that it's extraordinarily empowering.
Yeah, I don't know that I can follow that up with anything better that I can process. Removing the subdrop and the subspace from it and just embodying the feelings. I think you covered it best. Is really just acknowledging, like, I do have the capability to go this deep or this high, and like I just have to figure out what's the drivers, what am I feeling, what is it really doing, and what is the foundation of the feeling that I'm riding, and really isolating that. I think that you're able to uncover so much more about yourself, because when you were sharing, Lizzie, earlier about like, I don't want to be in this space, like, but sometimes it's just asking for the understanding of, hey, I'm gonna get here, and like, it's not something I want to do. It's not something I want to be, nor do I want to complain or talk about it. It's just more so how it drives. But I'm always hopeful, and I've seen the power of introspection in my own journey and in the journeys of others. And I think the more times we're able to ask and just go that layer deeper every time to say, like, what is it now? Like, because I realized by doing that, and like Natalie and I have talked about the need and asking needs and wants of each other, like sometimes it's just different. It's just a different thing each time that's arising or adding, whether that be in the positive or the opposite direction. So I'd be curious. I'd be curious to see how others reflect on that. Did you want to weigh in, Master, on this last?
No, you actually covered the detail that I was gonna talk about.
Which part?
The underlying factor of what the sub-drop is highlighting.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Well, just like that, we're at 8:30, which this hour flew by. But I want to take a moment, because we talked a lot about heavy emotions and feelings. So you guys know what I'm gonna ask. So drop our favorite emoji in the chat to show everybody that they are not alone, that they processed with one another, and they were seen and heard. And I appreciate everyone for sharing and being so open. This is something that Natalie and I have really enjoyed the most about these calls, is watching you all come and just share. And we've learned so much from all of you. So I celebrate all of you for being here and listening, whether you got to share or not. So thank you for hanging out with us this past hour. Natalie, I'll turn it to you and Master for what to come over the next week.
Yes, yes. What Mary said, thank you, everybody. Your courage and bravery and transparency is always appreciated. And the fact that we've been able to cultivate such a space for that is beautiful. So, what's happening within the next week? I know next week we're talking about the mind-body-spirit connection within submission at the same time as we usually do, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time here on Zoom. But is there anything else that you would like to share?
We have our daily TikToks at noon that we cover one question a day, where we dissect foundational questions about the BDSM journey and your self-awareness, self-value, and integration of this information. Thursday, we have boxed wine and art down at the Oculus in the World Trade Center. Boxed wine and BDSM, down at the Oculus Canvas 3.0 Gallery, powered by the Meta Betties at the Oculus in the World Trade Center, right? Close, right? Powered by Canvas 3.0.
You can remember that?
No, I got it backwards. And then Friday, if you're in New York City, we have our open play space and dungeon up here in East Harlem. And then Saturday, we're having a covering ceremony and leather night at the Canvas 3.0 Gallery down at the World Trade Center.
Will that be on Zoom?
And that will be on Zoom, and there will be a link posted on the kinkcollective.net website. Kat is getting covered, as well as one of our leather brothers, Tom, and a dear friend of ours, Miss Lady. We're going to have people visiting us from across the country for it.
I'm really excited for Saturday.
So lots to come. You guys don't want to miss out. So be sure to join us at one of our next virtual offerings, or come join us in person if you're local to the New York City or tri-state area. With that, we'll wish you all an incredible night ahead. Thank you guys so much for being here. And we'll chat soon. Natalie and I will hang out for a minute. As always, if you guys have any other questions.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, social media.